Hi, folks. Again, I'm Nora McKenzie. I'm a member of the Business Reference and Academic Libraries Committee for BRASS and also the co-chair of the Symposia Committee alongside Christy Cunningham, who is my fellow co-chair. We've had a great subcommittee this year. We have Angel Truesdale, Brian Garrison Wynn, and Doris Dwee, who've been working hard to put this symposium together for you. All of our sessions will be recorded and will be sent out to everybody who is registered. If you haven't already, please go ahead and mute your audio and your video as we get started with our next session. So thank you so much for spending time with BRASS and our presenters today. Our next session is Bridging Academic Data Literacy Competencies and Workforce Needs, Insights from an Interview Study. And I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Brian Garrison Wynn, who will be our moderator.
Thank you, Nora. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Wendy Pothier and Patty Condon from the University of New Hampshire. Take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. And just confirm, Patty, are my slides displaying correctly?
Yes, they are.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for coming to the session today, and thank you to BRASS for always hosting such wonderful and relevant conversation topics for our community. We're excited to be here and present on our research to the BRASS community today. I'm Wendy Pothier, a business and economics librarian at the University of New Hampshire, and my colleague.
I'm Patty Condon, the Research Data Services Librarian.
Thank you. And so today we'll be presenting initial findings from a recent interview study that we conducted. The research is a follow-up study to prior study that we conducted in 2023 that was survey-based, and which investigated the relevancy of data literacy in the workplace through a set of proposed baseline data literacy competencies, and how librarians can use those competencies to support workforce development in undergraduate education. We will be doing a few interactive slides today. So if you could join our Menti slides and participate, that would be wonderful. If you go to menti.com and enter the code that Patty is putting into the chat, we'll have 3 interactive kind of activities during the presentation. And then, of course, we welcome your questions, and we'll leave time at the end for that as well. So if you can follow along in the chat, and if you kindly could hit maybe the small cat or tiny thumbs up in the corner to know that we made it there all together. Thank you. All right. So as we start this off, we first want to also acknowledge that this research is funded by the 2023 BRASS Research Grant Award, which was sponsored by Emerald Publishing. And we just want to express our gratitude for that funding. We were able to conduct this research because of that award. So thank you, BRASS community, and thank you, Emerald Publishing. Okay. And a little bit of an outline of our conversation today. We'll begin with an overview to provide context of the interview study and highlight some of the research findings from our first phase of our work, which was, again, the survey. And with that foundation, we'll share initial findings from the interviews with a focus on themes that we've discovered. We'll then share a few thoughts on the application of our findings, followed by time for discussion questions. Also, you'll see a QR code on your screen, and Patty will put a link into the chat, which she has already done. Thank you, Patty, to a LibGuide that links to our prior publications on this work, as well as additional selected resources on data literacy and librarianship and data literacy in business context. Thank you. All right. So there are many definitions of data literacy. There's some great articles linked in that LibGuide that discuss the various contexts and need for data literacy definitions. And for our studies, we have centered on this definition from our work, which was from research done by Wolf et al. In 2016, focusing on real-world questions from large and small data sets, extension of knowledge of specialist data handling skills according to goals, collecting, cleaning, analyze, visualizing, critiquing, and interpreting data, communicating stories from data, and considering the ethical use of data in all of this. So That is the definition we center our work in. And sorry, my voice is end of semester voice today. Setting the stage for our research study and central to our work is the demand for data literacy skills in the workplace, and has guided our overall project goals across the research that we've been doing together since roughly 2018 on this topic. And data literacy skills are highly valued in the workplace. They provide companies with employees who are equipped to be a data literate workforce, and that often ends in a competitive advantage for a company. But in turn, data literate employees have increased marketability. They report higher job satisfaction and lower job stress, and feel more empowerment over their career trajectories. However, across the literature, both academic and business, and within professional practice, there's a lack of agreement on shared vocabularies, competencies, and strategies on how to educate the workforce and data literacy concepts. While the list of parties invested in these conversations shaping the future of data literacy is diverse, it is important to consider the specific role of librarians as a contributing voice to the dialogue with an established foundation in information literacy, and as educators in the data literacy ecosystem, academic librarians can leverage our work to support student learning and development of these needed workforce skills. So kind of our overarching need and goal for this interview study and our previous study as well. In 2019, Patty and I introduced 7 business data literacy competencies, which we proposed as baseline competencies for business students to help them prepare for entering the workforce and working with data at various levels on the job. These competencies reflect data literacy requirements for working professionals at an entry or broad level within an organization, recognizing that greater levels of competency would be developed in areas as needed by job type or through gained experience or gained through experience. Excuse me. Underscoring our investigation in these studies is this complex information challenge, the extension of data and information literacy from the classroom into the workplace. And understanding the data literacy needs of professionals in the workplace, we can bring back our findings to the classroom practice to help librarians, business researchers, and faculty and business professionals more holistically approach data and information literacy challenges that we face in workforce preparation and development. So our listed competencies are there, and again, linked more substantively in the QR code LibGuide. As a follow-up to that initial work in 2022, we mapped our competencies to the ACRL framework to understand the relationship between those competencies and information literacies, and data literacy is an extension of information literacy, underscoring the similarity of the core concepts between the two sets of skills, and helping us also underscore the role of librarians in providing students with skill development that is vital to their success in the workforce, and increasing the transparency around our role in that work. So our research questions that are focused, again, kind of broadly across both studies, the study we're sharing sort of as context, and then the study we'll talk about with more specifically the findings. The purpose of both of these studies is to demonstrate in what ways the 7 proposed competencies transfer from the undergraduate classroom into workplace scenarios. And these studies move the proposed competencies from their theoretical development to align them with professional and educational practices. So the recap of our phase 1 survey is that we did, which was conducted in 2023. It was a way to demonstrate that transfer, again, between undergraduate classroom and workplace scenarios. And it involved an online survey of 20 questions. It took about 15 to 20 minutes to complete. We worked with a population that was employed within the supply chain or logistics industry, or in a supply chain or logistics role within a non-industry related company. We offered an incentive drawing, and we were able to get 164 valid responses for that that initial survey. And just to share a little bit about who those folks were, because spoiler alert, our interviews are done from the population of the survey. Our respondents share their demographic in their various categories. We talked about employer size, years in the industry, gender, race, education, to look at how those literacy skills might be distributed across the workforce. And so a sample of the demographics is shared here, focusing on education attained and years working within the industry. And our survey sample, as you can see, was largely educated with at least a 4-year degree, and also largely identified as white and male, which is the largest demographic also employed in the supply chain and logistics industry. So something we noted. And then on a broad level, our as you'll see, the 95% in the lower left-hand corner, a broad level, our findings suggest pervasive use of data within the workplace. And so our work then began to explore discrete aspects of those data literacy skills needed by employers, needed by employees to work with data on their jobs. So the findings demonstrate this ubiquitous ubiquitous use of data and the need for data literacy across our sample size in all categories of time and industry, education level, and job category. So I'm going to pause. Just again, invite you to that Menti. We have a fun activity, high bar, but we have a fun activity we'd love you to participate in. And that is, for our initial survey, we broke down those 7 competencies into 9 corresponding activities. We did some pilot research, and it helped us have more clear and less jargony language to work with our respondents. So here we have those 9 kind of data skills and tasks listed. So we asked our respondents to rank those on the importance of the activity in performing their job, from most important, number 1, to least important, number 9. We would like to invite you, before we share our results, we would like to invite you to participate by considering how you believe industry professionals ranked these following competencies from most important to least important. So you're not answering for yourself, you're guessing how industry professionals would answer. We'll give you a few seconds here to make your decisions, and then we'll look at the actual survey data and see how well we're aligned. We don't have the wonderful music playing that we had during our interim, so I'm going to make awkward comments about how much I loved that Radiohead came on right before we presented, and just made me feel real nostalgic. So we have about 100 or so people in the room, so we'll give it maybe about 15 to 20 more seconds for you to think about your ranking as though you were an industry professional.
This is pretty fun to watch, just so everyone knows how much Wendy and Joe and I are enjoying it. So, or at least I am.
I like the real-time movement is my favorite part.
Before the big reveal.
Yeah.
This isn't the only fun high bar game that we'll be playing.
You have to make your research fun. That's the lesson I've learned in 5 years of collaboration with Patty, that she invites fun into research, and it makes it sustainable as a hustle of our job. Should we call it, Patty? All right, so we're gonna say, here we've got about 50 respondents, and our ranking is first data, using data to make decisions. Then we've got interpreting data, presenting with data, identifying sources of available data, advanced data processing, evaluating, ethics and security, organization, and data storage. So let's see how, and we can kind of switch back and forth for a minute. We'll see how our industry, our 164 industry respondents noted this. So similarly, well done. Using data to make decisions was the number one most important ranked, and it went extremely important to over 60% of our respondents, followed by interpreting data, presenting data, evaluating data, identifying data. So really similarly aligned with your guesses, which is so good to see, right? It's helpful to we understand what happens outside of our workplace context in academia. And one thing that we want to note about these findings is that, excuse me, that, and thank you again for participating. We really appreciate it. The survey data suggests that, the 5 highest data, kind of data-driven decision-making or data to make decisions, interpreting data, presenting with data, evaluating data, and identifying data, we can categorize those as non-technical skills, and they emphasize critical thinking, problem-solving, communication, decision-making, adaptability, and domain knowledge. And the broad need for non-technical data literacy in the workplace is documented well across business literature, in professional practice and conversation. The other 4 categories were consistently ranked lower by respondents, both in frequency performed, which is not shown here, and importance, which is shown. And those are often, we found that are often activities that tend to align more with specialist roles, advanced analysis, or often IT-specific work. So thank you for participating in that. Something else to note from our survey that's relevant to our interview findings is we noted how participants became skilled within each of those data literacy areas. And this is really important to the discussion on the ecosystem of data literacy education. So it's a seemingly multi-pronged approach, the data literacy education ecosystem, and it involves educational and organizational settings. And higher ed would play a key role in data literacy development, of course. But less than 50% of our respondents indicated that they became skilled in data-related areas through their education. In general, respondents overwhelmingly indicated that they learned these skills on the job. So this initial phase 1 of our research study led us to understand that there's a phenomenon called the data literacy gap, which is frequently referred to across business literature in a singular term, data literacy gap. But our survey findings suggest several observable data literacy gaps, and they include misalignments between employer expectations and employee opportunity for skill development, inconsistencies between data literacy training and higher education against workplace needs, and then varying comfort levels with foundational data literacy competencies. So addressing these gaps requires comprehensive, multi-pronged approach across higher education and in the workplace, employers implementing training initiatives, higher education preparing students for data-related tasks, employer and employees being motivated to enhance their own skill development. And all of this is to say that encouraging collaboration across these groups, higher education, industry, individual learners, will establish a more cohesive strategy to build the gap, to bridge the gaps and promote a workforce ready for an increasingly data-driven world. So we hope to see more research done in this area, and we're excited now to share kind of our more recent findings that we were able to do. So I'm going to turn it over to Patty to talk about our interviews.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wendy Jo. So the second phase of this, the research study was follow-up qualitative interviews. We recruited participants from that pool of the survey respondents. They opted in to be contacted. We conducted 16 interviews, at which point we felt that data saturation had been reached. So Wendy conducted one-on-one recorded interviews via Zoom. They lasted about 30 minutes. The interview questions addressed participant use of data in the workplace, their perspectives on the baseline data literacy competencies, and their experience with data literacy skills development. As an incentive, we offered $100. All participants were at least 18 years of age, employed in these areas related to supply chain and logistics, and our pool for the interviews were all from the United States. While most participants had degrees related to business administration or business management, academic backgrounds also included Spanish literature, creative writing, biology, and engineering. Important to say that all of our, actually it was half and half. 8 of the participants had bachelor's degree and 8 had master's as their highest attained degree. So independently, so this is the, I want to just briefly go over sort of the analysis process for the coding process for the transcripts. So independently, Wendy and I conducted an initial round of open coding on the same 3 interview transcripts. We identified inductive codes that emerged from the data after a close reading of the transcripts. Then we moved on to a focus coding where we got together, we discussed and compared the initial coding that we came up with independently and collaboratively selected a core set of codes. The final set was a set of 7 high-level codes. They had some subcodes associated with them. Using this final set of codes that we had collaboratively come to, and using in vivo qualitative data analysis software, I coded all of the interview transcripts and began to identify overarching themes. Wendy reviewed the coded transcripts, and together we refined and finalized those themes that kind of emerged from that coding process. So the next slide. So these are the themes that emerge. 4 themes, overarching themes emerge from this process. So their data literacy competencies are naturally articulated, and we'll go into more detail in a minute about these. Data literacy in the workplace is dynamic. Lack of alignment between higher education and workplace needs, that highlights that data literacy gap, and motivations to upskill. So before we move on to the next screen, we're about to go into the next set of games, and we're going to do 2 truths and a lie. Okay, we want to give you an opportunity to engage a little bit with that interview data. So we're going to play 2 truths and a lie, where we're going to present you with 3 quotes. 2 of them come from the interviews, and 1 of them is fake. We used AI to generate the fake one, so that ties into the previous talk as well. So your job is to choose the lie or the fake quote. So on the first screen, you're going to see the quotes. I'll read them out loud and give you time to read them too. Remember the statement number on that screen, because when we go to when you have to enter in the thing, you're not going to see the quotes anymore. So you have to remember which statement you want to call the lie. Okay. Oh yeah. So let's move on to the 2 truths and a lie. Okay. So quote number 1, you can say a lot of things with the same data, but critical thinking really stands out because how can you really understand a complex situation or business process without getting into the weeds and understanding the data? Quote number 2, I think that's the most important piece of data literacy in general, that people understand what processes the data represents, because when you can do that, data becomes very powerful. Statement number 3, even non-technical roles benefit from some data knowledge, though it's not always crucial because in most cases, the data speaks for itself. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time. No giving cheats in the chat. I'm going to give you a little bit of time to read these for yourself. And we're going to, then on the next, you won't see the quotes on the next screen, but you'll see the statement number. So just a couple seconds to read it. Wendy Jo has the toggle, so let's toggle. So which one is the lie? Okay. Oh, we're logging in, we're guessing. Which one is the lie? Okay. So the correct answer is number 3. So what we found is that all of the participants value data literacy as an essential skill set in the workplace, from our participants. The quotes also speak to the 2 top-ranked competencies, interpreting data and understanding data in business contexts. And most of the participants actually agreed with these 2 being towards the top in general. When they reviewed that ranking, they felt really comfortable with that. And these quotes also emphasize the value of the non-technical skills. Knowing how data is made and critical thinking was really highlighted by many of our participants. So I think we have time for the next one. I think we do, because it's so much fun. So we're going to do one more 2 truths and a lie. Again, you're going to choose the lie. Statement number 1. A lot of what we're doing now, I think, will be replaced by software or AI capability. So I think just for my own job security, knowing what data can do to help is important. Statement number 2. With advancements in AI, the need for data literacy skills will likely decrease as these technologies take over more data-related tasks. Statement number 3. It seems like there's no appetite now for learning curves for people joining companies, and that's tough on people. And if they can come out of school with some application of the tools that are out there or a good understanding of them, it helps them out in this challenging environment. We'll give you a few seconds to review those on your own. And again, on the next slide, you'll select the lie. Okay. Let's move along, I think. Toggling away. Okay, so you're going to select the lie. Couple more seconds. Let's see how we did. And the big reveal. Statement number 2. I like in the chat, it says number 2 sounds like something AI would say to praise itself. That's funny. So these quotes emphasize that the need expressed by our participants to understand data so that as technology advances, we are able to adapt and offer value through data literacy. So data literacy is not going to become obsolete. There's actually a different type of need for it, and maybe even more of a need for the human side of data and tools and analysis. It also brings up education and skill development. Upskilling can be tough on employees since so much learning takes place on the job. Finding time to do that can be very challenging. And it highlights one of the forms of the data literacy skill gap, that lack of alignment between higher education and workplace needs. So let's dig a little bit into those themes. So the themes that came up, and as someone noted in the chat also, that they relate very closely to information literacy. And I agree. I think that we saw a lot of that coming out from our themes and the survey as well. So data literacy competencies are naturally articulated. This theme represents participants conveying the essence of the data literacy competencies in their own words. So before we presented them with the competencies and the definitions of the competencies, participants were asked to describe in what ways they interact with data in their job roles. And what we found is that this question encouraged participants to reflect on their daily interactions with data and elicited responses where they naturally articulated skills and practices required for their jobs and workplace needs that align with the competencies, the proposed data literacy competencies. And so this finding suggests that the competencies are both recognizable and relevant to professionals working with data, even before being formally defined. And it suggests evidence that the competencies are confirmable in workplace practices. So moving on to the next theme, which we found, was that data literacy in the workplace is dynamic. I really like this one. This might be one of my favorite ones. If you can have a favorite theme in your analysis. This shows the proposed data literacy competencies are interconnected, they're context dependent, and inclusive of non-technical and technical skills. So the competencies are not isolated skill sets, but they work together to form a cohesive set of skills used to accomplish job tasks. Participants rarely discussed a single competency. Instead, they frequently described examples of working with data that invoked multiple competencies simultaneously or that were required consecutively. For example, for a quote, for a couple of quotes, you have to be able to understand data and how to apply it in the business context to be able to make data-driven decisions. So things like that. So it's about understanding and applying it in order to make those decisions. They would often link those together. And so another one was evaluating the quality of data, data organization and storage, data ethics activities are everyday pieces for me. So they often didn't separate it. They saw those as a chunk of skill sets that they used throughout their entire day or for whatever like activities they had to perform. So the competencies were, go back one, sorry. The competencies are also interconnected across organizations through collaboration, bringing in diverse skill sets, experience, and expertise. So this emphasized the importance of collaboration as a valuable non-technical skill in data-related activities, and highlighting a collective effort needed to leverage activity and data literacy effectively. So it was not always just about one employee doing all the competencies for a job task. It was about working in teams and different skilled professionals sharing those loads. They also described data literacy skills as contextualized in their experiences, the tools they use, the projects they worked on. So at different points in their career, at different points in a project, they might call on different competencies, right? So they might, it might be focused on evaluating the quality of data sources for a chunk of pieces. They might move on to interpreting. So it was that they invoked different ones depending on time in career or places in their career and projects. And also, there was a recognition that data literacy encompassed both the technical and the non-technical, such as critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and it's thinking critically about data outputs rather than accepting the results without question was highlighted by many of our participants. Really, that need for both the analytical rigor and sound judgment in data-related tasks. The next one highlights that data literacy gap, that lack of alignment between higher education development and workplace needs. Now, I want to, as a teaser for when we write up these results and get that published. We found this to be actually somewhat complex in how participants spoke about their higher education and what that gap actually looks like. Sometimes there was, in a way, a lack of recognition of understanding or articulating how higher education did prepare them for the role. So there's a nuance to this that I think that we will be exploring in that article. So this reflects that participants commonly characterize the data literacy gap, like in our interviews, as this disconnect between how they were prepared in higher education and sort of what they were doing on the job. And remember, all of the participants for these interviews had at least a 4-year degree. This misalignment also was highlighted by employer expectations and the need to upskill while on the job. And as Wendy noted in the from the survey, we clearly saw that on-the-job skill development was the most common type of upskilling that participants noted in the survey. So the last theme, theme number 4, was motivation to upskill, and it captures factors that influence participants why they wanted to improve. They identified several key motivations, including long-term goals and short-term goals. Long-term goals related to career development and acquiring new skills to progress professionally, and also short-term goals related to adapting to an immediate job need to address specific tasks or to meet employer expectations. An interesting thing that came up in these short-term goals was YouTube. A lot of mention of YouTube when a task was on their desk, they didn't know how to do it, they went straight to YouTube to get some videos on to quickly learn things. That came up quite a bit. Motivation to upskill also appeared influenced by measurable outcomes about increased job security, promotion, career advancement, improved performance in their role. Frequently, the participants seem to prioritize learning technical skills over non-technical skills. Again, I think that this is that tension between what they might be learning in higher education versus on the job, what they might need for on the job specific tools, right? There's a tension there. And then finally, personal drive and curiosity emerged as a decisive motivator for upskilling and personal growth. Those were the 4 themes. So we're going to bring up some final thoughts here. So what we found, some kind of closing thoughts for today, is that the value of non-technical data literacy skills in the workplace was really highlighted by our participants. I mean, when we talked about critical thinking and problem solving and communication and collaboration, all of our participants really didn't separate those from other skills. Those were by and far highly relevant and part of data literacy to them. And also, as noted, like a clear alignment between the data skills, particularly the non-technical data skills, and the framework and librarianship. So we had already previously sort of mapped them to the framework, the competencies, but I think that these themes really, again, show that connection a lot more. Wendy, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think something that's interesting for us in this research study is that when we initially made these proposed competencies and then explored them in a theoretical context, we were intentionally thinking about doing it for business students. I'm a business and economics librarian, and that was a question I had about related to my own work and what I was seeing. And as we've done the interview and the survey, we really understood that that it's not just business students that need these skills. It's students, our alumni who are in the workplace, and that is particularly highlighted in the conversations we had in these interviews, where our participants had really broad multidisciplinary backgrounds, and we're all yet doing the similar types of data tasks on the job. So highlighting that our own knowledge and context for this has changed over time.
Yeah. And I think that, the last sort of final thought is there's work to be done about increasing attention on data literacy in higher education and library practice, both for workforce development, if we move on, and for our students who are moving into the workplace, but also, for just in general, if we think about creating an informed community and citizens around data literacy and understanding sort of data. But like thinking about what that looks like applied and in practice is, I think, something that that all of us will continue to work on. Some next steps: the survey findings are expected in April 2025 in Portal, Libraries, and the Academy. The article on the data literacy gaps is currently under review. And we are in the process of writing up the findings of the interviews that we shared the themes here. We're in the process of writing that up. And so we want to move on to thanking you all for coming, playing our games and engaging with the data with us. I hope that you had fun kind of playing in the data. I know that we did for both the survey and the interviews. If you don't have any questions, we also have questions for you. So we came prepared, but we'll pause for a moment. I didn't see any come up. Oh. Any questions? Oh, questions. Did I hear Wendy say you're developing a data literacy framework? Oh, I feel like this is a.
No, that's not what I said. But it doesn't mean we might not. We or someone else could, or a group of us could. Because what we're finding is, and something, and we wrote an editorial in Portal last fall, kind of about how librarians can perhaps put action to some of these some of what we're discovering through our research. And I think part of it is mobilizing through our professional organizations, because it can't all of us individually being responsible to take on this work, and that shared vocabularies and foundational frameworks are really important in our profession, more important to us and how we communicate with each other sometimes than perhaps how we communicate with our colleagues across the faculty and to our students. And so I think we can be better responsive with frameworks, and it would be wonderful to engage in some of this work to broaden our research out and work with and collaborate with other people.
So
Lou Marie has her hand raised.
Oh, it has her hand raised? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. When we did the activity on our predictions versus the responses on the rankings of data literacies, one thing that I did notice, and maybe this might be a small difference, was that it seemed like they ranked evaluation of data sources higher than we thought they would.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you thought this meant something about how they gain a bigger appreciation of it after college, or is this like a success bias? Because I think that our thought process was going in on like thinking about what students that we teach, how we think they feel about it. So I was just wondering, what were your thoughts on that difference?
I have one thought, if I just share it. I think that part of that also came around, and I think this was really highlighted actually in some of the interviews, was around quality of data sources. So like it was evaluating data sources, but I think that a lot of people, thought about like evaluating that quality. So the quality of data came up a number of times in the interviews, and I think that evaluating data source was related, or I saw in some cases it being related to that, like sort of the garbage in, garbage out. And I think a lot of our participants did struggle with with messy data. And that was so that was one piece that I saw. Wendy, what are some of your thoughts?
I'm sorry, I was answering a question in the chat because we're running short on time. So I missed a little bit of what you said there.
Oh, the evaluating the evaluating data sources, the group here ranked it sort of lower. Then in the participants ranked it higher. And so I noted that that the quality of the data, like the evaluating the quality, kind of came up as a highlight for me. Do you have any other ideas why you think that ranking was different based on sort of how you teach data in the classroom?
I think, thinking back to the interviews, quality came up most frequently as a attribute related to that conversation. So I would say from that industry perspective of it was like understanding the quality of that data and where it came, and like a little bit of like where it came from, but more about like what's like the conditions of it.
There were many anecdotes about there were many anecdotes about messy data, and I think that the evaluation and quality and messy data all were related. So, but it's that's an interesting observation, Lou Marie. Yeah, I think that like that's the fun thing about these, and also sharing them in this venue, is that when you look at that, there are questions that the data, you're like, why is that? So I think that it's
And just noting a comment in the chat about students, alumni looking to learn more technical over non-technical skills. And that's definitely like the technical skill development was emphasized very highly as an on-the-job need versus, it's like our interview participants recognize like higher education can't teach you every single software application. And also, as we see even in our conversations about our access to these delightful toys of generative AI, right? Like it's a pretty low level AI, but the types of tools being used across your career are going to change, and employees need to be adaptive. And that was a recognized conversation. But the non-technical skill emphasis came back over and over in terms of extreme importance in being able to communicate across teams, communicate the value of the data, to think critically. At so many times we had, a CEO participate in our interviews, as well as a lot of folks, at different managerial points or non-managerial points within organizations. And that concept of not just pressing a button, not just putting things into a box was mentioned, I would say, maybe in 70% of the interviews is a rough estimate. So that non-technical skill is still highly, highly important, even though, you might not get a certification in it, or you might not earn a digital badge in it. You might not be able to articulate that as well in your LinkedIn, but it was absolutely a requirement of job expectation. I think we're out of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at
Thank-
time. So thanks so much for this fascinating work that you're doing. It's so valuable. Nora, would you like to add anything?
I just wanted to close us out and thank you again to our two presenters. That was such an insightful presentation, and I think everyone got a lot out of it. Just wanted to let you know that we'll be taking our next break until 3 o'clock, and that's when we'll begin promptly with our next presentation. Just so you know, the recording for this session, as well as the slides, will be sent out after the symposium alongside a feedback form, which we'd love to get your feedback. We think we have great sessions this time. We'd love to hear more from you about what you're looking for future sessions. So thank you so much for attending this session, and we hope to see you at the top of the hour at 3.